Okay, now we're recording. All right, so going back to our Prezzo. Ben Dearman team, KDR, weight loss wizard. Let's get into it. What we're going to go over today. Why changing nothing when you start is the best approach to long-term weight loss. Most people change a whole bunch of stuff when they start, and then they wonder why they're not able to maintain their long-term success. Well, I will tell you that the least you change when you start on your weight loss journey, probably the better the results are going to be for you, at least in our experience working with people over 20 years. Why can't I just tell you how many calories to eat? That's a great question. People will say that. They'll be like, well, just tell me how many calories to eat. We're going to talk about why that's not a good idea. Calibration week. Why calibration week is the most important week of your entire journey. And that is where we start our members when we first start working with them. Why determining baseline calories makes weight loss easier? How much of a deficit should you be in? What about carbs, protein, fats? What about the ratio of those things? And alternatives to calorie counting that don't feel like calorie counting. All right. We have a saying at KDR, and the saying goes, maintenance is the goal. The goal isn't to lose weight and put it back on. The goal is to keep it off for life. And that's where most people screw up, is they lose the weight, but they put all the weight back on plus some, right? So really that means three things. Three things. Number one, anything you do in phase one, you need to keep doing in phase two. Not all of it, but most of it. This should make a lot of sense to you, okay? Whatever you do to accomplish a goal, you probably need to keep doing most of the stuff that you did to accomplish the goal to keep the goal. That should make sense. All right. I do A, B, and C to reach that goal. If I stop doing A, B, and C, I'm probably not going to stay at that goal. Maybe I don't have to keep doing A, B, and C in its entirety. Maybe I just have to keep doing A and B, or maybe just A and C, right? But I'm going to have to keep doing whatever I do to get there. I'll have to keep doing it in order to stay there. Okay. If you break rule number one, you must do so consciously. So what that means is essentially you understand, let's say that you, for calorie counting, for instance, let's say that you know you're not going to count calories the rest of your life. Reasonable, because nobody does that shit, right? So you say, hey, I know I'm not going to count calories the rest of my life, so I'm going to count calories knowing that this will be difficult when I get into maintenance. Okay, that's fair. Because at least now you're acknowledging that you are breaking rule number one by doing something that you're not willing to do for the rest of your life. Okay, that's important. Because the alternative is, I'm going to count calories to lose weight. And then we go, great, are you going to do that for the rest of your life? And then you're like, I don't know. Okay, but that's not a great strategy. It should be a yes or no to that question, right? Or if you say, like, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour every single day. Great. Are you going to do that for the rest of your life? No. Okay. Did you know that if you stop going to the gym, like, you don't have to go to the gym every single day for the rest of your life, but let's say you lose 50 pounds, you get down to the goal weight that you love. And then I go, are you willing to go to the gym for like 4 hours a week for the rest of your life? And you go, no. Then you probably shouldn't be going to the gym for 7 hours a week to lose weight, right? So having said all that, again, if you consciously break rule number one, that is a totally different story than thinking that you're going to do everything in phase one and then keep doing it in phase two, right? The less we change, the better and easier long-term results are. The less we change, the better and easier long-term results are. All right. Counting calories is not a long-term solution. However, it is a short-term solution that can and will get the weight off of you. At some point, you have to pay attention to things other than calories, unless you want to count calories the rest of your life, which nobody does. So you have to pay attention to things like steps. You have to pay attention to portions, serving size. Serving size is different than portions or portion size. Serving size is what's on the label. Portion size is what you're specifically eating. We shouldn't all be eating the same portion size, but we should all be eating the same serving size because serving size is essentially what's on that package of food. Hydration, exercise. These are all things that you probably should be paying attention to at some point other than just the amount of calories that you're eating if you want long-term success. Calorie counting is not the easiest way to lose weight, but it is the simplest way to lose weight. All weight loss plans work by creating a calorie deficit. All of them. All weight loss plans. Okay. We had the big gym. we would do short-term challenges with our members, and we would put like 50 to 80 people through these short-term challenges. And to satiate my curiosity, we would use a different nutritional approach every time that we would do these short-term challenges. And what we found was, regardless of the nutritional approach, whether it's high protein, low carb, keto, paleo, calorie counting, portion control, intermittent fasting, any of these strategies or weight loss plans, any of these weight loss plans are going to work as long as they put you in a calorie deficit. And that's what we saw. We saw every single time that we would do these short-term challenges and we switched the nutrition plan around, we basically got the same results because all of those plans helped create a calorie deficit. Okay. So the only way that you're going to lose weight is by creating a calorie deficit. And having said that, there's lots of different ways that you can do that, but do not think that eating keto is the reason why you lost weight. No, you reduce your calories. Don't think that eating low carb is the reason why you lost weight. No, you reduce your calories. Don't think that eating high protein is the reason why you lost weight. No, you reduce your calories. Okay, you get the idea. Some plans provide more structure while painting a clearer picture of what you should be doing, like keto or low carb, right? But often the plans with high structure and a clear picture are incredibly boring. They're overly restrictive and generally difficult to stay on long term. Keto, you eat like 5 different types of foods. It's oils, animal fats, fatty meats, plant fats, so like avocado, and dairy. That's it. I mean, yes, you can eat vegetables and stuff like that, but that's the brunt of keto. Okay. But it makes it really easy because you only have these 5 things to choose from. Right? Nuts would also be in there, so maybe 6. You get the idea. All right. So there's a happy medium between having a plan that's too strict and too boring and having a plan that gives you a whole bunch of options and a lot of freedom. And that's typically calorie counting. So calorie counting or following a plan that does the calorie counting for you, like what we give to our members, tends to be the best of both worlds because you get some freedom, but then you also get some structure, right? Some general rules for calorie counting. Eyeballing. Eyeballing does not work. Please stop. I have a master's degree in nutrition. I weigh out most of my food. But I know, no, you don't. No, you don't know. You don't know how many calories you're eating on a daily basis because if you did know, you wouldn't be watching this video because you'd be at the weight that you want to be at. Right? So if a nutrition expert weighs out all of their food most of the time, you should probably be weighing out all of your food all the time to see the results that you want. All right? And if you do tell me that you can eyeball it and you're not happy with your current body weight, then you don't know how to eyeball it, right? Shouldn't you be teaching this if you can eyeball calories that well? All right. Anyway, digress. Sorry. That is a big pet peeve is when people are like, I'm really frustrated with my weight. And then we say, are you calorie counting? And they're like, yeah. And then we're like, are you measuring all your foods out? And they're like, well, I eyeball it. That's why you're frustrated with your weight because you're eyeballing your foods. Okay. When we're talking about general rules for calorie counting, you must weigh and account for everything. The 5 calories here and there add up. So weigh and account for everything, or weigh and count for everything. You must be willing to invest a month into calorie counting. This is not something that you do for a week or two. It's not something that you do for 1 month, unless you get the results as you want after 1 month. This is something that is going to be months. And the reason being is because there are 3 stages to calorie counting. There is the counting of the calories. There is the tracking of the calories, and then there's the adjustment of the calories. And then you go back to the counting of the calories, right? So you just cycle through those 3 phases, those 3 stages, while you're counting calories, right? Most people count, hey, I had 1,800 calories today. Do you monitor or track? So that would be great. You had 1,800 calories today. How many calories did you have 2 weeks ago? Oh, I don't know. I didn't write that down. It doesn't really help us to know how many calories you eat every day because we need to look back in time and see how many calories you were eating a week ago or 2 weeks ago or 3 days ago. And then once we have the counting and we have the tracking, then we're able to adjust based off the results that we're getting. Okay. So 3 stages of calorie counting: counting how many calories you eat per day, tracking or monitoring how many calories did you have last Monday or last week, and then adjusting, did you get the results you want? If you did get the results, you stay on course. If you didn't get the results, we change. Okay. You get the idea with that. 3 stages to calorie counting. You have to do all 3 stages. What if you don't have to change anything? So this is why you establish your baseline, your maintenance calories. Because what if you don't have to change your diet? What if maybe you just need to get some extra sleep? What if maybe you just need to hit some extra steps? You don't have to change your diet at all. I'm going to tell you straight up, if we can help somebody get the weight off of them without changing their diet, they get much better results than when we have to change somebody's diet. Okay. So the less we have to change someone's diet, the better the results they get. There you go. Now, having said that, eventually everybody has to change their diet, but not everybody has to change their diet right off the bat. Okay. Um, okay. There are 5 levers to losing weight. These are the only 5 things that you can adjust in order to get the weight off of you. Note how exercise is not one of them. Number 1 is NEAT. NEAT stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. In other words, how many calories you burn that are not from exercise. This would be your steps. All right. This would be a rough, easy way to just kind of classify as how many steps you take in a day. Sleep, pretty self-explanatory. Hydration, also self-explanatory. Tracking, so like tracking the things that you want to change, so like tracking your weight or tracking your food, and then obviously some kind of diet intervention at some point, right? Every one of you is already doing these 5 things. Every one of you is eating. Every one of you is walking around. Every one of you is drinking hydration, hot water, right? Every one of you is sleeping every night. And a lot of you are tracking your body weight, right? So like, those are the 5 things I need you to do. So if you're already doing those 5 things, why don't we just figure out which one of those 5 things we have to focus on first, rather than overhauling your entire lifestyle to get the weight off of you, all right? So you're all doing those 5 things, but you're doing them inconsistently. And you don't know where your inconsistency is. Some of you do, some of you don't. You might be walking enough. Oops, forgot my K right here. Might be walking enough, but eating too much. You might be eating too little during the week and too much on the weekend. That's very commonly called the weekend diet. Your hydration might be totally off. And this is where the calibration week comes in. All right. So what if you don't have to change anything? Let's say you don't actually need to change your diet. Maybe you just need to walk more. Maybe you just need to get to bed an hour earlier. Maybe you just need to drink the same amount of fluid every day. The all the time answer isn't always eat less and move more. This is very classic. Like, how do I lose weight? Well, you eat less and you move more. That's very broad. That's very general. And it's also very difficult to do anything with that that saying of eat less and move more. How much less, how much more? If you don't know what your baseline activity is, if you don't know what your baseline calorie intake is, then it's very difficult for you to eat less and move more. That's where the calibration week comes in. All right. And this is why it's so important to saving yourself time and headaches to go through this calibration week. Let's talk about it. Calibration week. What does it look like? The first week we work with somebody, we want them to change very little. We want to have an idea of just like, what is your baseline right now? Before we change a bunch of shit, what's your baseline? We do give them our done for you calorie counting meal plan, which essentially is portion control. However, they don't have to follow it on week 1 if they don't want to. And honestly, we get better results if they don't follow it 100%. Okay. If they just kind of look at it, incorporate some stuff, but keep their diet mostly the same, that's when we get the best results. The biggest thing we want for week 1 is determine a baseline. That is the most important thing for week 1. Our members track steps via a watch, daily hydration amount, food, sleep, and what happens to their weight. Again, the 5 levers that are going to give you 99% of your results. Typically, when somebody goes to the calibration week, they will lose anywhere between 5 to 15 pounds. That might be in the first week. Okay. However, if somebody gets great results in that first week of the calibration week, then we're going to have them do it again for the second week. Let's say they get great results the second week. We're going to have them continue the calibration week, just tracking things until their results slow down or until they don't get any results. So sometimes people stay in the calibration week, might be a calibration 2 months. All right. If the plan is working, I cannot stress this enough. If the plan is working, you do not change the plan, regardless if you feel like you can do better or not. Okay. So this is exactly what we're going to do to figure out our baseline calorie intake. And let's go into that in a little more detail. So first of all, tools you're going to need. You will need a digital scale for food. Ideally, it weighs things in the grams. However, ounces is fine, but it should be digital. A digital scale to weigh yourself on. Same thing. Don't go crazy on the scales, like $20. Okay. A wearable activity tracker like a Fitbit, Apple Watch, or Garmin. Those three do sync with our training app. So if you have any plans on working with us in the future, we do have some things that are going to be coming out to work with us. But if you do have some plans to work with us in the future, try and get one of those. Okay. Fitbit's the best one. Fitbit typically syncs with everything. Apple Watch would be the second best. It's got a lot of really cool things that it can do. But at the end of the day, we just need something that's going to track your steps, and we need it to be on your wrist. All right. So Fitbit, generally speaking, cheapest one, $70 should be good. No, your phone doesn't count. No, you can't use your phone. Okay. I need something on your wrist all the time. As much as you think you carry your phone around with you, you don't carry it around 24/7. But if you ever watch on, you will be able to carry that around 24/7. Okay. If the phone counted, if the phone was the thing that we could use to track activity, to track NEAT, then I wouldn't tell you to get a watch. All right. That's the easiest way that I can explain that. For those three things, you're looking at like maybe around $100. And listen, if you can invest $100 into a cheap Fitbit and 2 scales to help you take back control of your body and health, then weight loss should not be your priority right now, because those are the 3 things that I need you to get in order for us to help you. And those 3 things, arguably every single plan you're going to go on, you're probably going to need those things. Any successful plan anyway. All right, so determining baseline intake. This will last for 7 to 14 days, maybe longer. But if you can do it for 14 days, you're going to get the best results. 7 days would be the minimum amount of time that you should do this for. All right. So for 7 to 14 days, you will track and record. Track and record. It's the most important part. Calories. Bonus if you can break it down to protein, carbs, and fat, but it's not required. Total ounces of fluids per day. Preferably no calories in drinks. So like water, black coffee, all beverages count. All right. Hours of sleep per night, your morning weight, and how many steps you take in a day, or your NEAT. All right, so calories. So first thing we're going to be tracking in this calibration process is calories. And again, bonus if you can break it down into protein, carbs, and fat, but it's not required. All right. I do want you to use the same tool for tracking. MyFitnessPal, Lose It, Chronometer. Those are all pretty good online apps to use. You could also use ChatGPT. Do not take a picture of your food and then ask AI to figure out how many calories are in it, because it's going to screw it up. All right. It's not that good yet. Okay. So any app out there where you're using something where it's taking a picture of your meals and then it's determining how many calories are in that meal, it'll give you a ballpark, a baseline, but the more precise you are for this process, the better your results are going to be. Okay. So try not to use ChatGPT. On the flip side, you could say, how many ounces are in 100 grams of skinless, boneless chicken breast? You could ask that question to ChatGPT, and it will probably give you a pretty good answer, right? Do not estimate. Precision is the name here. I cannot tell you how important it is for you to be precise in this process, right? Food labels, save yourself time. So like I eat a rice cup a lot of times. Every day I eat like a little rice cup. And on that label, it's 220 calories per cup. Okay, right there. 220 calories. I just write that down, right? So I'm not going to like Google how many calories are in a cup of rice, because the food label is telling me exactly how many calories are in that rice. So take home point for that. If all of the food that you eat has nutrition labels, calorie counting becomes very easy. If all of the food you eat has nutrition labels, calorie counting becomes very easy, right? Multiple ingredient meals are the bane of calorie counting. They're like calorie counting's kryptonite. They're like arguably the worst thing that you can do for your diet is to have multiple ingredient meals like chili or meatloaf or pizza or stew or basically meals that have a whole bunch of ingredients. Those are very difficult to determine accurate calories. It should really just be like, here's my 6 ounces of skinless, boneless chicken breast. Here's my 5.5 ounces of potato. And then I put 2 tablespoons of butter onto that potato. All right. Much easier to count. Now, in that example I just gave, I do give you a volume and a weight measurement, right? So the weight measurement will be the ounces. The volume measurement would be the tablespoons. Um, if you can do weight, weight is way better than volume. So instead of it being 2 tablespoons of butter, what I would do is I would take I'd cut the 2 tablespoons off of like the butter stick, right? It's labeled tablespoons. I cut those 2 tablespoons off and I weigh it. And then it would be like, so instead of 2 tablespoons of butter, it might be like 130 grams of butter. Okay. Um, weight measurements are much better measurements than volume measurements. Okay. Grams or ounces is fine. However, I will tell you grams are much more accurate. Okay. So if you can do grams, that's great. There's not like a huge deal between like 130 and 135 grams, but there is a big deal if every single meal you have meals off that are like 5 grams. That does add up. All right. So if you can do grams, that's great. Don't get too caught up in it. A lot of members do ounces and they do totally fine. All right. So counting in grams is really just for that person that wants to be like hyper specific. Okay. But ounces is totally fine. All right, let's see. So for the 7 to 14 days, we want to be as precise and accurate as possible with this, since this is going to determine our baseline intake and how we determine our calorie intake. The more precise we are, the easier that's going to be. You're going to track it every day. Most of you will drop a bunch of weight during this period of time without changing too much of what or how you are eating. Again, use food labels. A McDouble is about 450 calories. Quality of food doesn't matter for this process. Make it easier on yourself, right? All right, fluid intake. Total ounces of fluids per day, preferably no calories in drinks. One of the best things that you can do for weight loss is do not drink your calories. Now, having said that, like a protein shake, protein and water, that's okay. All right. But if you can try not to drink your calories, you will have much better weight loss progress. 0-calorie beverages, ideally. Use the same vessel for your to track this stuff. Bigger is better. So this is a mason jar. All right. I have my chocolate LMNT in here and my creatine. Okay, so this is a mason jar, right? I like this because it has ounces on the side, and this is about 30 ounces. I think I put 40 ounces. Yeah, so it's about like 30 ounces, right? So for me personally, I have to drink about 3 or 4 of these. Okay, um, if you are drinking your hydration out of like a 6-ounce cup, it'll be very difficult for you to track that. All right. So you really do want to try and get a big vessel for your fluid. And that way you're like, hey, I've had 2 of these today, or I've had 3 of these, versus having a little 8-ounce cup and like 5 p.m. at night. And you're like, oh man, I don't remember how many of these 8-ounce cups I have. Okay. So the bigger, easier it is to track your fluid intake. All right. Shoot for 1 ounce of fluid per 2 pounds of body weight, or half body weight in ounces per day. If you're 200 pounds, it's 100 ounces. A gallon of water weighs approximately 8 pounds, 8.14 pounds. Okay. That means your weight could fluctuate by 4 pounds plus or minus every day just because your hydration is all over the place. Monday, you have a gallon of water. Tuesday, you have a half a gallon of water. Wednesday, you wake up, you're 4 pounds light. You're like, this is awesome. Wednesday, you have a gallon of water. Thursday, you wake up, you're 4 pounds heavy. Very common. So we need to get that baseline fluid intake. All right. I cannot explain to you how important this is. 16 ounces is 1 pound of water. So if you're 16 ounces shy here and there throughout the week, that is going to be a big reason why your weight fluctuates large amounts. Right. So fluid intake. Hours of sleep per night. This is the most complicated one. But in the grand scheme of things, all we're really looking for is what time do you lay down, what time do you get up. Okay. We want to track literal hours, or excuse me, if you're trying to track literal hours that you are asleep, this is an incredibly difficult process. Not that accurate. Okay. So we're really just going to be looking at what time do you lay your head down on your pillow and what time do you get your ass out of bed. All right. And ideally, we want to have same bookends. Okay. That means that every day you wake up at the same time and every day you go to bed at the same time. If you can do one over the other, like let's say you go to bed at the same time, but you wake up at different times, that's okay. If you go to bed at different times, but you wake up at the same times, that's okay. But if you can go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time, that's much, much, much better. Or you go to bed at the same time and you get out of bed at the same time. Much, much, much better. All right. So that's what we're tracking for sleep. All right. Okay. Track your morning weight. So as soon as you wake up, you are going to track how much you weigh because that is the thing that we're trying to change. So if we don't actually track the thing we're trying to change, how the hell do we know if shit's working? We don't. All right. So this is going to be your morning weight. This is going to be after you go to the bathroom, before you eat or drink anything, naked, and you're going to track that. All right. This should really, to me, this is always kind of like a no-brainer when I ask people to track their weight and they're like, oh, no, no, that's bad. That's bad. I can't do that. It's like, well, how do we know if the plan is working? We don't. All right. So sometimes people will say, well, you shouldn't weigh yourself every day. Like, don't weigh yourself every day. That's crazy. It's like, well, why not? Isn't the goal of my plan to lose weight? Right. So I should track myself to see if my plan's working. Then we get into the next question. Well, your weight's not going to go down every single day. Well, that's not the point of daily weigh-ins. The point of daily weigh-ins is not to see your weight go down every single day, because if your weight goes down every single day, you're going to die eventually. And you probably have something really wrong with you, like potentially cancer. So we're not tracking weight every day to see it go down every day. What we're tracking is we're tracking the average. And in order to figure out the weekly average, we need those seven data points of weigh-ins. We don't have those 7 data points of weigh-ins. I can't figure out your weekly average. All right. And we get into, I can't weigh myself every day. It messes with my head. Weighing yourself doesn't mess with your head any more than checking your gas messes with your head when you get into your car. Right. What really messes with your head is the bullshit you've been served around diet culture over the last 20 years, meaning, no, I should be able to lose 10 pounds in 1 week because my cousin Kelly did. Or don't weigh yourself, only weigh yourself once a month. What happens if the day that you weigh yourself, the day before, you didn't eat anything? Well, then you're gonna be down and you're gonna be like, man, this is awesome. When in reality, it was just what you're looking at in the last 24 hours. Or what happens when you only weigh yourself once a month and the day before you eat a lot of food and your weight goes up and you're like, shit, this plan sucks. No, you only looked at your weight after you had a really big calorie day, right? Really, when people are telling me I can't weigh myself every day, it messes my head. What I take that as, what they're really saying is I expect crazy results with minimal effort. That's what they're really saying, right? So you should get in the habit of weighing yourself every single day. There's a fantastic website. It's called the National Weight Registry. And basically what this website does is it looks at long-term successful habits and behaviors of people that have, I think it's lost at least 30 pounds and they've kept it off for at least 1 year. All right. Like, how many of you want to lose 30 pounds and keep it off for at least 1 year? I bet all of you, well, maybe not all of you, but I bet a lot of you do. All right. So what they do is they say basically, hey, what did you do? What did you do to help you keep this weight off of you? And a vast majority of them say that they do multiple times a week weigh-ins. I think it's like on average, like 3 times a week weigh-ins, or maybe 4 times a week, right? So those are what the successful people do that have kept the weight off of them. So chances are you should do that shit too, if you want to keep the weight off you. And it's for life. All right. Why do we want to weigh in every day? Why do we want to track these things every day? Because at the end of the day, we are dealing with the law of averages when it comes to weight loss. Averages are where the magic lies for weight loss. And most people do not look at the averages. They only look at the extremes. What's your average weight on week 1? Is your average weight on week 2 lower? Then the plan is working. But the only way that you know that is if you're actually tracking your weight to figure out your average. What's your average calorie intake per day? Is your average calorie intake per day less than what you should be eating daily to lose weight? Yes, then the plan's working, but the only way you're going to know that is by tracking your average calorie intake, right? If you don't track averages, you don't know if the plan is working, and you will be stuck in the yo-yo part of weight loss, weight gain, which sucks. So we are always looking at the averages. I don't care if your weight went down 5 pounds in 24 hours. I don't care about that. I care about what was your average weight on week 1? What's your average weight on week 4? Is your average weight on week 4 less than your average weight on week 1? Plan's working, right? That's what I care about. All right, determining baseline intake. Yes, this is huge. Way more, but the amount of steps that you take every day is way more important than how many hours a day you work out. Pretty crazy. This is huge. Most people don't walk enough, straight up. Walking is probably like the least sexy part of losing weight, but it is probably the most effective other than eating in a calorie deficit. All right. This is like walking is like the secret weapon for weight loss. What if you just need to walk more? Like, what if you literally just need to get your ass up out of that chair and just walk a little bit more? Maybe not even walk a little more. Maybe you just dance. Maybe you just dance a little more for like 5 minutes every other hour. Okay. That's the only thing you do. So you keep drinking the full sugar milkshake coffees that you get. You keep eating the muffins. You keep eating the donuts. The only thing that you change is you get your ass up out of your chair more than what you're doing right now. You're probably going to lose weight. That's pretty cool, right? You don't know if you have to walk more if you don't know how many steps you are currently taking. Bam. Track your steps. Track it. Sorry. I can't express to you how important it is that you record and you monitor and you track this stuff. Because if you don't track it, then we can't go back in time and see what you were doing, right? And if we can't go back in time and see what you're doing, then it becomes very difficult to predict things in the future. So you're going to track it every day. You're going to record those data points. At the end of the 7 days, you will be able to determine your average fluid intake, calories, weight, sleep, and steps. That gives you your baseline. That gives you your maintenance. That tells you what you need to do in order to maintain your weight. And right now, you have no idea what you should do to maintain your weight. So this is what's going to tell you to do that, right? We're going to look at those 5 levers. And then, hey, should we do another 7 days? Remember, I told you sometimes we have people stay in the calibration week for a month or 2 months because they're getting the results that they want, right? So if it's not broken, don't fix it. If you're getting results, do not change it. So if your day 7 weight is lower than your day 1 weight, do another 7 days. Because what you need to do, and what you just did, was you need to be more consistent with the things that you're doing. And over the last 7 days, you were more consistent. And just the action of you tracking and being consistent, that's what caused you to lose the weight. We have some people that are like that. A lot of people are like that, to be honest with you. Is they just have to be more consistent and they just have to track those things and then boom, all of a sudden the weight goes off, right? So if your weight on day 7 is lower than your weight on day 1, you want to do another 7 days because you're probably going to lose weight over the next 7 days as well. All right. And also, you would take this a step further. If you did do 14 days, then we would kind of change this a little bit. So what we'd say is we would put this average in here. So if weight average on week 2 was lower than weight average week 1, do another week, right? So that's another way you can look at it. But the only way that you're going to be able to figure that out is if you do it 14 days. So second part, if your day 7 week, if your day 7 weight is the same as your day 1 weight, congratulations, you've determined your baseline intake. Fantastic. You did a good job. Maybe not, you didn't lose any weight, which sucks, but you figured out your baseline intake. You could do another week. That's fine. Or you can move on to the next slide, which I'll get to in a couple seconds. Lastly, if day 7 weight is higher than day 1 weight, you did some weird shit. You did some weird stuff during the week. You either had a big meal on day 6 or a small meal on day 0. There's a lot of other things that could potentially happen. You need to do another 7 days. Generally speaking, your weight shouldn't go up at the end of those 7 days. All right. But if it does, it just means that you need to do another 7 days. Okay. Let's see here. We've had a successful calibration week when your day 7 weight is lower than your day 1 weight, or it's the same, or your average of week 2 is less than your average of week 1, or is the same. Calibration, maintenance, baseline. You've just figured that stuff out. Now, what do we do with that information? Well, first of all, it's going to look like this. Okay. This is just something that I whipped up in Excel. But it's going to look something along this, like Monday, 1,800 calories, and we track all the calories. Now, some of these things I do want to total, and an average. And some of these things I just want an average. All right. So I do want total calories because it's not how many calories you eat every day. It's how many calories you eat in the week and then averaged out over 7 days. All right. So I want a total for calories and I want an average for calories. Right. I want a total for steps and I want an average for steps. For your weight, I want an average. For your water, I want an average. And for your sleep, I want a total and an average. Right. So as we're looking at this, I say, hey, Monday I started at 185. Sunday I ended at 190.2. I would want to do another week of this because my weight went up. All right. Let's say I started at 185 and I ended at 185. That's good. I got my calibration calories. They're 1628. Let's say I started at 185 and I ended at 183. Great. That means I got my calorie maintenance level 1628. All right. Sometimes I'll chuckle like somebody comes in and they're like, I've worked with a nutritionist in the past. I go, awesome. They have me count my calories. I go, great. How many calories did they have you eat? And they're like, 1672. What? So 1672, not 1670 or 1675 or shit like even just 1700 because like is there that much of a difference between 1672 and 1700? Not really in the grand scheme of things. All right. So please, 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 when you're counting your calories, make that shit easy. Okay. If your baseline intake is 1,628 calories per day, you'd probably be totally fine going like 1625 or 1650 or 1600. All right. So just round to like the nearest 25. Okay. Or you can go to the nearest 0 or 50, meaning if you're 1628, you could either go 1600 or 1650. Fine. If you're 1843, so your baseline is 1800 calorie or 1843 calories, you could go 1850, you could go 1800, that's fine. All right. So don't get caught up on like the really, really tiny numbers. All right. Round numbers. So it's going to look something like that, right? All right. Once you've determined your baseline intake, you're going to subtract 10 to 20% off of that baseline intake. So if your baseline intake is, let's just call it 1600 calories, then I'm going to subtract 160 to 320 calories off of that. Some of you will want to subtract 20%. You're much better off if you subtract 10%. You're much better off if you start in a very, very, very tiny calorie deficit and then see what happens versus a very large calorie deficit, right? So stick with 10%. But I know some of you are going to be greedy. So 20% would be okay. 10% is probably going to give you better results. 20% will give you faster results. I'll let you figure that out. So baseline intake, 2,200 calories. Weight loss intake should be 1,800 to 2,000 calories, right? And you should have a range, okay? Or you move 1,000 to 2,000 steps more per day. All right, so let's go back to this. So we say, hey, our baseline calorie intake is 1,628 calories. So I'm just going to say 1,625 at an average of 5,000 steps per day or 5,100. Same idea, right? At 90 ounces of fluid on average per day at 7 hours of sleep. That is what maintains my body weight. Okay. So if I keep all of this, I keep this the same, I keep this the same, this the same, this the same. The only thing I change is this right here. And I just change that by 1 to 2,000 steps. And I keep everything else the same, your weight will go down. Okay. Because you're either going to create a calorie deficit through activity or you're going to create a calorie deficit through diet. Right. So I can keep calories the same and just move more, creates that calorie deficit. I can also keep activity the same and eat less, creates that calorie deficit. All right. So that's it. Those are the only two levers that you're going to be able to pull to create that calorie deficit in the grand scheme of things. All right. So that is how you figure out your intake for weight loss. Is you either subtract 10 to 20% off your calories, keep everything else the same, or you reduce your steps, or excuse me, you increase your steps by 1,000 to 2,000 more steps per day, and you keep everything else the same, right? One over the other, not both. Most people change both right when they start. The problem with changing both is what if you don't have to change both? What if you only have to change one? All right. And if you change both, then we don't really know what gave us the best results. So by changing diet, um, you know, by changing diet and kind of staying the course for 2 weeks, and then the next 2 weeks we change activity, and then we stay the course for 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks we change diet. That gives us a much better idea of what lever we're actually pulling to get the results that we want. All right. So as much as possible, pick one of those two. The whatever you pick. So in terms of projecting out long term for adjusting calories, that is really calorie counting 201, not 101. But I will say that let's say that you decide that you're going to move an extra 1,000 to 2,000 steps per day and you want to keep everything else the same. And let's say you do that for let's say you do that for 6 weeks. And let's say in those 6 weeks, you drop like 20 pounds. And eventually on week 7, you don't get any more results. Your results stagnate. All right. What you would want to do is then you would want to go back and you'd want to address your diet because you already addressed your activity. So now the next lever is going to be diet. And then let's say you adjust your diet down 10% calories and you keep everything else the same. Let's say that gets another 20 pounds off you in 4 weeks. Well, eventually that's not going to work anymore. And then you're going to go back and you're going to adjust your steps again. All right. So you're kind of bouncing back and forth like that. All right. Generally speaking. Let's see here. It is literally that simple. It is literally once you figure out baseline calories, maintenance calories, it is literally as simple as just eating 10 to 20% less calories or moving 1 to 2,000 more steps. And anytime that we troubleshoot results with people, that's like 80% of troubleshooting is either getting that person to move a little bit more while keeping everything else the same, or getting that person eat a little bit less while keeping everything else the same. That's like literally like 80% of troubleshooting for results, as long as they're tracking this stuff. All right, so once you determine your baseline intake, a 10% deviation is fine. All right, remember, we're going off of the average, okay? However, if you're supposed to eat 1,800 calories on average, and you figure out 10% is 1,620 on the low end, and on the high end, it's 1,980. And let's just say you eat 1,620 all the time on average, you might be okay, but that means that your average calorie intake is not 1,800 calories anymore. That means that your average calorie intake is 1,620 if you eat 1,620 every day. And I need your average calorie intake to be at 1,800 for this particular example. So you would be better off if some days you hit 1,620 and some days you hit 1,980 to give you a closer average to 1,800. So when I say a 10% deviation is fine, it means a 10% deviation on the daily basis, but your total average intake should be as close as possible to what you've determined your average intake should be for your weight loss, right? Total weekly calories matter more than daily intake for long-term weight loss. So what does that mean? Well, a lot of people think about calories in terms of how many calories do I need to eat in a day? And that's assuming that every 24 hours you start over at burning 0 calories. That doesn't work that way. From the time that you are conceived in your mom to the time that you die, you are burning calories every single second of the day. There's never a point in time that you're not burning calories except when you're dead. All right. So asking how many calories you should eat every day isn't the best question. The easiest question, but it's not the best question. The best question is how many calories I need to eat in a week. And that's basically going to be your average times 7. So if to lose weight, we're going to use round numbers. If to lose weight, you should be eating 2,000 calories, right? Let's go back to this. And let's actually say we're going to use this as an example. So let's say, so there's my intake. I'm going to reduce my calories by 10%. I'm going to go to 1,500 calories. Okay. So that's going to be my my daily average intake. I'm going to take 1,500 times 7. So 1,500 times 7 equals 1,500 times 7 equals 10,500 calories. So in the week, I need to have 10,500 calories, right? As close to that number as possible. Daily average breaks down to 1,500 calories, but I might be a little bit low on Monday, a little bit low on Tuesday, then a little bit higher on Wednesday, maybe a little low on Thursday, maybe a lot higher on Friday, but it equals out to that 10,500 total calories in the week, right? And what that does mean is, yes, let's say that you're supposed to have 12,000 calories in the week. Actually, let's say 14,000 calories because that's an easier number. That's 7,000 calories, or excuse me, 2,000 calories per day. So let's say you're supposed to have 14,000, and this is what a lot of you are doing. Let's say you're supposed to have 14,000 calories in the week total, which comes out to, on average, 2,000 calories per day. All right. But what you're doing is you're eating like 1,000 calories Monday through Friday, and then you're eating like 4,000 calories on Saturday and Sunday. As long as that stays under the 14,000 calories, you're good. The problem is a lot of you aren't doing that. A lot of you are eating a humongous amount of calories on the weekend and an incredibly low amount of calories in the weekdays with no idea of how many total calories you'd have in the week. So if you are supposed to be eating 14,000 calories, you could theoretically have 2 days of 7,000 calories and the other 5 days you don't eat anything. And you could lose weight with that. Please don't do that because there are a lot of nuance with that that I'm not going to get into right now. Why can't you just tell me how many calories to eat? Oh my God. We've been there and we've done that. All right. And it's almost always, I am not eating that much, or I can't eat that much. All right. Almost always, like 99.9% of the time. And the problem is with consistency. You're eating more than I want you to eat on average to lose weight. Because if you were eating less than I wanted you to eat on average, then you wouldn't be listening to this because your weight would be going down. So by default, that means that you're eating more than you should be eating to lose weight. All right. Because your weight's not going down. So let's go a little more into this. You're eating 2,200 calories on average, but you're eating 1,200 calories Monday through Friday, which gives you 8,400 calories total Monday through Friday. And then on Saturday and Sunday, you eat 3,500 calories on Saturday and Sunday. And then those two together give us about 15,000 calories. All right. Well, let's say that your weight loss intake should be an average of 1,800 calories per day. Well, you're eating more than that on Saturday and Sunday, but you're eating way less than that on Monday and Friday. And that's what leads you to say, I can't eat 1,800 calories. That's way more food than I'm used to eating, but it's not. It's just more food than what you're used to eating on certain days of the week, like Monday through Friday. But it's actually less food than what you're used to eating on Saturday and Sunday. So the issue is not, I can't eat that much food. The issue is that you are consistently eating more food, but you don't know how you're consistently eating more food than what you should be eating to lose weight, but you don't know where that consistency is, right? That's why the calibration week is so important. You are a person, not a calculation. So I can give you all sorts of calculations, and those calculations on paper could be 30% plus or minus off of what the calculations say. All right. You are much better going off of real world data. Now, we used to test people's metabolic rate. We used to use a Met cart or a metabolic cart. And this was basically a mask that you wear and you go into a dark room for, I think it was like 20 minutes. This was like 10 years ago. We used to do this stuff. So you go into this dark room for like 20 minutes and you're just kind of like hanging out. And what that's doing is it's measuring how much oxygen you're breathing in and how much carbon dioxide you're pumping out. That in turn allows us to be able to figure out your baseline calorie intake. All right. And that's a real world assessment because we're looking at literally how much gas, O2 are you bringing in and how much CO2 you're pumping out. So we're really looking at you. Okay. Well, when we did that and we would compare that to the calculations, they were like 30% plus or minus. Sometimes the calculation would say, oh, this person needs to eat 1,800 calories to lose weight. And then it turns out that they're only burning 1,200 calories at rest. If I have that person eat 1,800 calories and they're only burning 1,200 calories at rest, they're going to get a shitload of weight. They're going to be really pissed off at me. Sometimes it'll say this person's burning 1,800 calories and I need them to eat 1,500 calories. All right, well, that's easy, right? They're burning more than what they should be consuming. So The best way to determine your calories is not by using a calculation, is to figure out how many calories it takes for you to maintain your body weight. That is the best way to go about counting calories. What about carbs, protein, and fats? What about that ratio? Everybody talks about, 33% carbs and 33% fat. No, that shit doesn't matter. All right. Within the context of calorie counting 101, does not matter. All right. This is really calorie counting 201. The reason why it doesn't matter is because at the end of the day, what matters the most is the total amount of calories that you're consuming. You could be eating an adequate amount of protein, but you're overeating calories. Okay, well, you're overeating calories, so it doesn't matter. You're not going to lose weight. All right. So calories are king, protein is queen, and carbs and fat don't really matter that much. All right. So total calories matter way more than the ratio or the breakdown of carbs, protein, and fats. If you want to track that stuff, you track calories first, then you track protein second, carbs and fat are third. Right? You could have a diet of 90% carbohydrate. If your calories are where they should be for weight loss, you will lose weight. I will say a diet that is higher in protein than carbs and or fats tends to get the best results. A diet that is high in carbs and fats and low in protein tends to get the worst results. But if both of those plans are in a calorie deficit, they will both get weight off of you. It will be an easier time and you will lose more weight with a higher protein intake relative to carbs and fat, right? All right, gang, that is calorie counting 101. If you have any questions, drop them below in the comments. I hope you learned something from this. Again, it's an incredibly simple thing. You count your calories, you track your steps, you track your sleep, you track your hydration, and you track your weight. And you do that for 7 to 14 days. And you eat as well. Let me back up. During that 7 to 14 day period, you do not want to change anything. You want to be as consistent as you possibly can. So during that 7 or 14 day calibration process, that is not the time where you start going to the gym if you haven't been going to the gym. That is not the time that you start walking an extra 20 minutes every day. All right. That is not the time that you change anything. You need to be as consistent as possible during that 7 to 14 days. Do not change anything. All right. Now, having said that, if you want to change some things to make your life easier when counting calories, then that's totally fine. All right. So, for instance, let's just say hypothetically, you're like, well, every day I have pizza and every day I have chili and every day I have quiche or something. And those are all really hard foods to determine calorie intake. And let's just say that for the 7 to 14 days, you're not going to do that anymore. And what you're going to do instead is you're just going to have you're going to have eggs, bacon, and toast for breakfast, right? That's pretty easy to count. For lunch, you're going to have tuna fish and potatoes. Like that's pretty easy to count, right? So the more complex your diet is, meaning like you follow all of these recipes and your meals have like multiple ingredients, the more complex your diet is, the harder it is for you to lose weight. Now, having said that, if you follow like a recipe that gives you calories, that's a totally different scenario, right? So if you're like, hey, I'm following this meatloaf recipe, and the meatloaf recipe tells me that this meatloaf is going to give me 1,000 calories at this protein, carbs, and fat, then that's okay. It's probably not incredibly accurate, but it's a lot better than just typing in MyFitnessPal and saying how many calories are in meatloaf, because you're going to get a whole bunch of different things for that. All right. All right, gang. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you learned something.